Living in Virginia, you're in the fast lane on the information superhighway. We've invested $3 billion in Virginia's broadband network to give you one of the fastest internet connection speeds in the world, so you can build relationships, bring new business to our state, and meet the future of education. It's amazing what we can do together. Visit VCTA.com to learn how broadband connects the Commonwealth.
From the General Assembly and the City of Richmond, I'm Woody Evans for Cable Reports, brought to you by the Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association, connecting Virginians to their government. We're fortunate to have Senator Dick Saslaw, the Democratic leader in the Senate, with us today. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Woody, and it's good to be here.
Well, tell us, you're in the beginnings of the special session. That special session was called because of the inability to get a budget, primarily relating to Medicaid. Talk to us about how that happened and where we are from your perspective.
The House, having just gone through an election, and where the voters made it pretty clear that this was a major issue on their minds, they had it in their budget, and as a result of them having it in there, there's more than $400 million available to them in the general fund than there was in ours. The introduced budget had Medicaid expansion in it. We had to go cut more than $400 million out. Actually, it's even bigger than that. But the House had it in there, so they have about $180 million more in their budget for K through 12 and about $80–90 million more for higher ed than we do, amongst many other things. And because in there, with a provider assessment and the federal money, it freed up $420-some million that we didn't have for them to spend on these necessary items, and we did not reach an accord prior to the expiration of the session on March 10th. And therefore the governor had to call us back, and we started last Wednesday. The House had the bill, they've heard it, they're voting on it today. We'll get it tomorrow, and we will start working on that. But I think this process probably has a ways to go.
Talk to us a little bit about that blue wave that occurred, which changed the tenor of the debate in the House of Delegates.
Well, there's a lot of opinions on how it happened, but the prevailing one seems to be that the fellow living across the river at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue was a major motivating factor in so many Democrats turning out in the November election. And it led to another sweep, and the Democrats picked up 15 seats in the House, almost picked up a 16th, except for a draw in the, and actually they had won it at one time, Newport News. So they went from being down 66-34 to 51-49. As a result of that, you did not see a lot of the social bills that you've seen, in the past, and it's changed the tenor of the debate there. The Senate did not go through an election. Had they, more than likely the Democrats would have been in control of the Senate as well. And things are changing in this state. The demographics are changing, but make no mistake about it, you've got a guy in the White House who's driven a lot of people who have never been involved, or very much involved in the political process before. They are heavily involved now. And Woody, I attended one of these marches on March 24th. I was up in Winchester. I had to speak to a group up there, and then I spoke at one of those marches. Those high school students are not going away. They're going to be here, they're involved, and I think it's going to play a very big impact in 2018.
Now, it seems like the roles are reversed in terms of the House and the Senate. Back in 2014, the Senate was in favor of expanding Medicaid, but the House was not. What do you attribute that to, besides the wave election?
Well, that wave election is 90% of that. The Senate did not go through that. Otherwise, Medicaid expansion and a budget would have been sitting on the governor's desk. And you sometimes, looking at the votes, it's almost like the Senate, at least the Senate Republicans, have totally ignored what happened last November, and I think that's a huge mistake. The state's changing, a lot of things are changing, and I think you're going to see what you saw last November, you're going to see again this November. I would be very surprised if the Democrats didn't pick up a minimum of 50 seats in the U.S. House. And I think that's why you've seen 46 Republicans in the House, U.S. House, have announced their retirement, including the Speaker.
Now, you've indicated in the past that, in your opinion, Medicaid is not only a financial issue, but also a moral issue.
It is a moral issue. When you take a look, I think the health wagons that are going around now in the Southwest and probably some part of Southside Virginia, 86% of those people don't have insurance. 86%. And, we can do better than that as a people and as a state and as a government in supplying these people with health care. 400,000 would qualify under a Medicaid expansion. And the other thing is it would slow down the skyrocketing, these increases that you see. Keep in mind, they get their health care, they show up at the emergency room at a hospital, and they usually don't go until they're extremely sick, and the cost of getting them better is far beyond what it would have been had they had health care insurance and gone to the doctor, when they just had a minor problem before it became a major problem. So it would be a big help. The other thing that people need to understand, some of the ones who are on Medicaid now at the 50-50, match level, we put up 50, the federal government puts up 50, they would be, some of them would qualify for the Medicaid expansion, which is 90% federal government, 10% us, and plus the fact that there are ways to fashion that bill so the state doesn't pay anything.
Now, what about job creation? Will Medicaid create jobs?
The estimates that I've seen are that a full-blown Medicaid expansion would produce between 25 and 30,000 jobs.
25 and 30,000 jobs.
Right.
25,000 to 30,000 jobs. 25
to 30,000. That's the numbers that I've seen.
Mm-hmm. Now, what about public support? Has there been any polling done on
Yes.
the issue?
My understanding is almost 80% of the public, or slightly more than 80%, supports Medicaid expansion.
Now, I understand you mentioned these mobile clinics. I understand once a year that there's a clinic in Wise, Virginia. People park, sleep overnight in order to obtain medical care.
That's exactly right. It's not just a few people that show up. My understanding is it's up close to 1,000 or more. And they do stay overnight to get that. And, when that's how your health delivery system is working, it's pretty hard to recruit a business to go down there when that's your delivery system.
Now, what about the monies lost to the state every year as a result of not expanding Medicaid?
Well, as part of that job, estimate, keep in mind, you're talking about $2.5 billion a year.
$2.5 billion.
Yeah, we're forgoing. We have probably missed out on over $10 billion, and it comes to about $5 to $6 million a day that we are losing by not expanding Medicaid.
And that money can't be recouped from the federal government.
That cannot be recouped. And keep in mind, you're paying additional taxes now, and it's the other states that are benefiting from that, not Virginia.
Now, you're a member of the Finance Committee. You're also
Yes, sir.
a budget conferee.
Yes, sir.
Recently, two of your colleagues, Republican colleagues, indicated that they're leaning towards voting to expand Medicaid
Right.
upon certain conditions. Can you talk to us about those two?
Well, nothing's set in concrete, and the provider assessment, which bed tax, however you want to call it. One of the members, Emmett Hanger, has a problem with, but there are ways that we can fix that, okay? And if we increase the payment, increase the reimbursement rate, and keep in mind the federal government is paying that. I think that would the hospitals would willingly, if we, because our reimbursement rates are terrible, we bump that up a little, they have no problem with the assessment. Frank Wagner wants the savings spent, he wants it, they actually both want it, on health care, but there are, there's so many other things we need to do. The teachers in Virginia, here we are, the 9th or 10th richest state on per capita income, okay? We are 30th in average teacher pay.
30th.
30th. And if you pulled Planning District 8, Northern Virginia, out of the equation, we're like 48th or 49th. We're tied with like Oklahoma and West Virginia. And we need to do something about that, okay? We've got a teacher shortage in this state, and it's particularly acute in the sciences and math, and we need to do something about that.
Now,
our average pay, by the way, is $50,000 according to NEA, and I think it's either California or New York. It's like $79,000 is the average. It's almost $30,000 more.
so I take it we're losing teachers to other states?
Or they're choosing not to go into this profession.
Now, what about this work requirement that was part of the House budget in terms of,
Right.
Medicaid? Talk to us about that and whether Democrats are willing to accept
Well,
that.
I think that it depends on how it's structured. Keep in mind, between 75 and 80% of because you're talking about, by definition, the working poor, 75 to 80%, my understanding is, are working already. So now you're talking about that 20%. Who are they? Well, some of them, I'll admit, are probably people who could do a little more than they are, but there's some who are, just totally disabled and can't work. But we can work out something, similar. I don't want to call it the Arkansas plan or the Kentucky plan, because quite frankly, there's nothing in either one of those states that I find attractive that we want to model, our government after. But we can work around that. Keep in mind that when you do that, that requires substantial supervision. What you really want to do is structure a program where you don't just have a work requirement, because they may not keep that job. You need to do more than that. You need to take that, some of the TANF money, a whole batch of those programs, kind of merge them and put it into some type of workforce development where you give these people a skill, and along with that, you teach them what it takes to keep a job, okay? Because otherwise, just saying you got to work, that doesn't solve the problem, because a lot of them, they're either in dead-end jobs and they quit, or they have the lowest paying jobs imaginable and it doesn't work. So you're not solving anything. So you really need to get these people, you need to give them a life skill.
To what extent will a Medicaid expansion help the middle class here? I know you already mentioned the fact that the high use of emergency rooms drives the cost of premiums up for everybody.
Absolutely does. And You know, when they go and they get that free care, and somebody's got to pay for it. And who pays for it is you and I. How? Well, when they calculate their costs next year to give the insurance companies on what it costs for a room, for this treatment, for that treatment, that goes into that, and you and I wind up seeing that in our insurance bill. You expand Medicaid, and now these people, you know, are having, you know, they now have medical insurance. They're not showing up at the emergency room, and it's going to hold down your costs. Plus, as I said before, you're going to take, there's some savings to the state because they're going to take the people who are on some of the people who are on 50/50 Medicaid right now are eligible for expansion.
Now, we're still recovering from the Great Recession, which began, what, 2007, 2008, and as a result of that,
About 8 through 10.
K through 8, as well as our institutions of higher learning and our community colleges have been hurt. Talk to us about the need to bring them up to par.
Well, K through 12, we're funding about where we did in 2008, only it's 2018. And so we're asking them, they all have more students, but we're asking them to make do with less. That doesn't work real well. And we just can't keep doing this. You know, we've made some bonehead decisions many years ago with this car tax relief that takes $950 million a year out of the budget, of which, and by the way, 23% goes to one of the wealthiest municipalities in America, mine, Fairfax County, and 42 to 43% goes to Northern Virginia. And what's interesting is it was